We all know the basics. The beautiful Jewish Queen Esther ascends to the throne and courageously intercedes to save her people from annihilation. The villain Haman is exposed and defeated while the Jews celebrate victory over their enemies in the Feast of Purim that continues today. But have you ever wondered, what's the rest of Esther's story? Beyond the familiar Sunday school tale lies a drama-filled backstory and aftermath loaded with untold secrets, tensions, and questions that envelop this enigmatic heroine of the scriptures. Why was Esther forbidden to reveal her nationality as a Jew at first? What was life in the Persian royal harem really like? How did she strategically leverage her relationship and influence with King Xerxes while keeping her deeper identity concealed? What was the fate of Haman's 10 sons, and why is there controversy over it today? Did Esther struggle with her meteoric rise in status, having been an exiled orphan? Most intriguingly, with no mention of God in the book, how much was divine providence secretly working behind the scenes after all, and through whom? In this special extended episode, we'll go behind palace walls to unpack the mysteries and subtleties around Queen Esther's risky rise to royalty. The layer of power plays and palace intrigue in Susa's high places, the showdown against Persian prejudice, and the surprising Jewish awakening amongst diaspora culture. There's much more beneath the surface about this strong, savvy woman God leveraged for such a time as this. Together, let's uncover and marvel at the untold story of history's most unlikely queen, the radiant, relentless Esther. Most know Esther as an orphan Jewish girl raised by her cousin, but few realize her bloodline traces back to Judean royalty. She was born Hadassah, descended from the once renowned house of Saul, which ruled Israel centuries before. So why was Esther's prestigious lineage not boasted of? Likely because after the Babylonian conquest, flaunting royal heritage would risk retaliation from jealous rival kings. Some scholars suggest the family purposefully buried ties to King Saul. They assimilated into anonymity amongst the exile community, building quiet lives in Persia. We can only imagine the intrigue swirling when, as a young child, Esther's life ruptured forever. Persian records retell how a treasonous plot abruptly took her parents' lives when the king's security was breached under their guard duty. Overnight, young Hadassah was entrusted to her older cousin Mordecai, an official in the Shah's court. He raised her with compassion as a daughter, instilling Jewish traditions. She likely found solace in imagining the grandeur of her ancestors whose faded glory now survived only in synagogue scrolls. Retelling Saul's famed triumphs scored into Israel's memory. Then one day, while bringing food to Mordecai at the palace gate, her beauty caught the eye of royal scouts searching for a new queen. And so, Hadassah was dramatically plucked from humble exile society into the dazzling courts of Persia, adorned with the queenly name Esther. As we'll see, echoes of her family's once noble authority never quite faded as Esther navigated the palace's highest echelons. And in time, bonds to her own exiled people. Facing quiet crisis would compel this queen to reclaim risks her royal forebears once took to change the fates of a nation. To grasp Esther's saga, we must envision the dazzling yet dangerous Persian imperial court. History scholars help recreate the opulence and decadence of King Xerxes' palace. Lavish banquets with exotic foods, stylized furnishings, rich court fashion, and tributes of gold arriving from conquered lands. But the grandeur also hosted darker intrigues hidden from public eye. The struggle for influence with fickle kings, surveillance politics of harems, and minority tensions ever brewing beneath the realm's sheen of absolute power. Within this maze of agendas, young Esther found herself intensely coached to assimilate. Her Jewish name Hadassah replaced with the Persian-flavored Esther, meaning star. She likely wrestled privately, fearing what forgetting her people's ways might make her become in this alluring new identity built from cultural erasure. yet as a marginalized exile member. Esther realized adopting Persian practices gave security. Outwardly, she soaked in mannerisms and leveraged tactics to charm the king's favor. Inwardly, she clung discreetly to Mordecai's Torah teachings from her youth, remaining covertly Jewish. Beyond assimilation pressures, the prospect of entering King Xerxes' harem as a numbered candidate posed another emotional weight. Enduring an objectified existence, forfeiting autonomy over her future, she braced to be but one vibrant flower amidst the king's vast collection of possessions and entertainment. Amidst brutal power politics, Esther's drive to survive Persian culture's highest yet most precarious circle would soon transform into daring strategy. In this tense duality, her secret past prepared Esther to save her people by reaching the pinnacle of influence while guarding her true identity until the pivotal hour. In the royal court, a threat quietly rose against the Jewish exiles, in the figure of the ambitious noble Haman, who the king promoted as his highest minister. Power quickly corrupted Haman's ego as he expected every subject's veneration. But Mordecai, the Jew, refused to kneel before Haman. Some historians believe Haman associated Mordecai with the Persian officials who assassinated his grandfather, the anti-Semite Amalek. Others suggest Mordecai refused homage to any mortal out of loyalty to his Jewish faith. Whatever transpired, Haman fixated on revenge against Mordecai. He manipulated King Xerxes into signing an irrevocable edict permitting enemies to plunder and slaughter all Jews across the 127 Persian provinces on one blood-stained day. The news plunged Mordecai and all Jews under Persian domain into devastation. Esther, secluded in the palace's cocoon, remained unaware until her distraught adoptive father Mordecai persuaded her to intervene. But approaching the king, unsummoned, risked immediate execution. Yet Mordecai compelled Esther to face this fear, saying, "Who knows if you were made queen for such a time as this?" With terrified courage, Esther crafted a risky plan, inviting King Xerxes and Haman to a private wine banquet. Then another the next evening. There she aimed to charm the king's favor before unveiling Haman's sinister plot and pleading for her people's lives. The initial intimate banquet built suspense, as Esther danced around revealing her endangered identity or petition. Instead, she coaxed Axes the king would grant her any wish, up to half his kingdom. This dramatic assurance would echo soon, with unintended irony against the royal court's most powerful figure. The famous story ends with Haman's execution on the gallows he built for Mordecai, and King Xerxes allowing the Jews self-defense against their attackers. But several ancient Persian and Greek texts reference the subsequent massacre of Haman's 10 sons, also instigated by Esther to prevent future retaliation. This extrajudicial killing remains hotly debated. Was Esther seeking justice or vengeance by eliminating future threats? Critics believe her quest for power corrupted the former exile girl into mirroring Haman's merciless bigotry that she condemned. Defenders argue she took reasonable precautions to protect her vulnerable people group. The violent overthrow permitted mirrors Joshua's bloody conquest of Canaan instead of Moses' grace before Pharaoh. Unlike other biblical rescues, God's salvation here flowed not through mercy, but full armed resistance sanctioned by Persia's political authority. Some explain this was necessary, being still in exile without their own jurisdiction. Others see glimmers of messianic foreshadowing. The climax, turning on banquet intimacy, evokes the Last Supper, and Esther sacrificing her security to intercede before earthly powers would echo Christ before Pontius Pilate. This integration of Esther's story with Persian imperial power, both its pomp and violence, may disturb our expectations. Yet through this compromise came deliverance from annihilation. Esther's risky rise upends assumptions about how God moves in history's higher places to rescue through deeply flawed figures. As the curtain draws on the continuing impact of that fateful day, when Esther's courage changed history, much is left to ponder. From political exile to privileged royalty, her breathtaking rise traces a larger story woven into the tapestry of God's providence. Esther's example forged courage in a Jewish community facing an identity crisis. Her strategic, unspecified ethnicity, while maintaining her hidden faith, mirrors much of diaspora Jewish history over the centuries as God preserved his scattered people's hope. Her balance of deep faith, disruptive civil disobedience, and cultural integration points to the Messiah, who would one day turn the world upside down through similar paradoxes. Like Moses before the Pharaoh and Daniel amidst Babylon's false gods, Queen Esther's stand would reverberate through the generations, an unlikely standard bearer for God's oppressed people destined to overcome in the fight for justice. As threats against Jewish survival persist today, Esther's deliverance rings with the timely reminder. Salvation will surely dawn beyond tomorrow's uncertainty if we, like Esther, courageously rise to answer the call for such a time as this. So now you have glimpsed behind her famed story with its controversies, secrets, and lingering questions. While we may never fully unravel the enigma of this exiled young woman turned defiant queen, her hand in that epochal turning point cracks open history's door to the end of days when no plot against God's anointed will prevail. Until then, may Esther's legacy ignite audacious courage to catalyze hope in every generation.